SwiftUI prides itself for being able to allow developers to do things in a declarative way, but also in a more simplified way when creating user interfaces. Now, one of the things, if you are a mobile developer in general, but specifically an iOS developer, is that there is this thing called table view. Table view is essentially a way in which we can create cells in a list format so we can scroll up and down to show more information, right? So imagine you are querying a database of some sort that has a lot of data. So a best way to display that data would be to create rows in a list, and so people can scroll up and down so you can see that information, and also be able to tap on a specific row and be taken to a details page per se. So in SwiftUI, of course, there is a better and faster way of doing this. So I'm going to show you right now how to put together a list or a table view for those of us coming from Objective-C and UIKit. Let me create a variable here called names, which is going to be an array that will contain a few names here. Okay, so I'm going to type a few names here, Maria. All right, that's simple enough. So I have an array containing a few names there. So we are going to put all of those in a list. I'm going to get rid of this. And of course, we have an actual component that we can use called list, like this. You can see at the bottom here, it's a container that presents rows of data arranged in a single column. So that's very handy. And we can go straight and pass in the data source as follows. So inside the parentheses here, I'm going to just say self.name, just to invoke our array names, that is. And then what I'm going to do here to pass the ID, because we want to make sure that each time we loop through and create this list here, we have to pass the specific ID of each item. So in this case here, just like what we saw before with for each, we're just going to say .self like this, okay? Because it's just a simple array, and that should be fine. And then we'll say name in, and of course we can pass another view here, this text, which I'm going to just add the name that we're passing. So in this case, run this, we should see something very awesome here that was given for free. Look at this. Just like that, we have the names showing in a very nice list here. Now, if you've done some iOS development with Objective-C and or UIKit SwiftUI, you'll notice that to create a table view, as this is called, a list, it's pretty cumbersome. So you have to put together the actual table view and then connect the rows and cells and figure out which item is being shown and so forth. So just like that, we're able to create a list and just pass in the data and then display the list as quickly as possible. Pretty neat. And of course, as you know, we can go ahead and add a few modifiers here. I want to make bold. I would say font to be maybe caption and so forth. So all of that stuff that we've learned, we can of course apply to our text there. That's a little bit too small, but you get the point. Now our names array here is very simplistic. Usually we want to create something a little bit more sophisticated per se. So I can come down here and create a struct and call this country, which will represent a single country. And of course, usually when you create data types, you want to put those inside of their own data folder. But in this case, because we're just trying to get things across here, it's okay to create a struct here. Sometimes it's actually necessary to do so. So in this case here, I can say, for instance, let name be of type string, let population be of type int, and then we're going to say let ID is going to be of type int, right? So we're going to go ahead and create an actual data type of type country so that we can populate everything. So at the top here, we can say let country list. Of course, it's going to be of type country objects, right? Or types. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and create the actual array, because since we're here, might as well do that. So I'm going to fill out this array with country, right? So in this case, I'm going to pass an ID, start with 0, and string, let's say Mozambique. Population, we're going to just put a gibberish number here, doesn't really matter. And I'm going to do the same thing for others. I already have a list of countries, so I'm going to just copy them and paste them here to simplify our lives. So now we have our country list, and we're going to use that. Now, one thing to remember here is that this country type that we created at the bottom here, we need to actually make it conform to identifiable. So identifiable as such. The reason why is because with our list, if we don't add this as identifiable, then we're going to have some issues looping through and adding those items or these countries in our table view list there. Okay. Very good. So at this point here, we'll just change a few things. So instead of call these names, I'm going to call this country list. So I'll say country list as such. And instead of self, I can just go ahead and actually get the ID, because each country has its own ID, and we're going to use that. Okay, now we have a problem here because it says requires that the country conforms to string. What he's saying here is that this name, as it is right now, name is an actual object of country. So we need to go and invoke the property name or whatever else we want to do. In this case, let's change this from name to country to be more specific, which means I also have to, of course, change the handler there. So country like this. All right. So save this and give it a run. We should be able to see the list of at least 10 countries. And voila, you can see it's looking really good. Okay, so just like that, we're able to create a very simplistic list from first having just a simple array and then creating an actual country list which contains objects of countries which contain IDs, names, and of course population. So in the next video, what we're going to be doing is we're going to make sure that we add a navigation to our list here. So when we click on one row, it should take us to somewhere else or a details page.